So good evening, registered nurses, nurse practitioners, student nurses, and members of the public. I hereby call to order the 68th Annual General Meeting of the College of Registered Nurses of Newfoundland and Labrador. My name is Tracy McDonald, and I am the college chair. I'll first start with a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement is offered to recognize Indigenous peoples' enduring connection to their traditional territories, to recognize the history of the land that is currently shared by many peoples, and to recognize stewardship as a shared commitment of all who reside in a territory. We respectfully acknowledge the territory in which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, and the island of Newfoundland as the ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. We would also like to recognize the Inuit and the Innu and their ancestors as the original people of Labrador. We strive for a respectful relationship with all the peoples of this province as we search for collective healing and true reconciliation and honor this beautiful land together. I will run through how tonight's meeting will proceed before we start the formal agenda. First, I will pass it over to our IT support operator, who is Riley Shea this evening, through the Signal Hill Campus Memorial, who will advise of the process to follow if you encounter any technical difficulties. Riley, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, everyone. So if you have any technical issues, you can just put an issue, whatever issue you have, in the chat. There's 3 people in the room that will advise of any notifications, we'll say. They're sitting right next to me, so we can get everything sorted right away. Other than that, I don't foresee any issues. It looks good on my end. And if you do want to catch a meeting, if you do get kicked out of the WebEx while we're working with you, I do know you can also join on the CRNL website. There's a YouTube link there that's also streaming, and that's working fine as well.
Thank you, Riley. The AGM documents can be found on the events page, which can be found at the bottom of the homepage, similar to what Riley had just referenced on the crnnl.ca. I will now describe those documents in the order of how they will be used on tonight's agenda. The annual meeting business documents include 1, the meeting agenda, the 2021 AGM minutes, audited financial statements approved recently at council meeting on June 2nd, the CRNNL annual report, and 3 different PowerPoint presentations, 2 actually, financial statements, executive director report, and the chair report. The PowerPoint presentations will also be shown on the screen for those joining by the webinar. I will now describe how quorum is determined in accordance with Bylaw 6, Section 4. The number of members that shall constitute a quorum for any annual general meeting shall be A, the voting members present, and B, the presence of 7 members of council, 2 of which must be publicly appointed councillors. I'm just wondering if we could validate that we have quorum.
We do have quorum.
Okay. Are all council members present as part of quorum, Lynn?
Yes, the names of the council members that are present, Riley, are you able to read them out?
I can. Tracy McDonald, Glyn George, Louise Pinsent Parsons, Kimberly Legg, Tanya Ryan, Patricia Rogers, Donna Luther, Megan Hudson, Neil Colburn, and that's all I see right now. I'm just looking through the list to make sure there's nobody I've missed, but that looks about it.
Okay, thus quorum is obtained. Thank you. I want to highlight that this annual meeting covers anything beginning April 1st, 2021, up to and including March 31st of this year. And certainly for those of us gathered here this evening, that seems like a short period of time in months, but we know it's been a long 12 months. It's been a long 2 years. Please again refer to the college website for any additional information on any topic related to what we're going to discuss this evening, as well as anything since March 31st of 2021. Feel free to use the chat feature to pose any questions or relevant comments throughout the meeting, and those will also be monitored through a moderator to look at contributions for our open discussion forum later in the agenda. If you happen to be watching this through our Facebook page or YouTube channel and wish to pose a question, click the link to the event page again to join the webinar. If the allotted time does not allow for your question to be answered, I encourage you to contact the college's executive director after this evening's AGM so that we can ensure you receive the information you are seeking. And also, if you have additional questions after the AGM this evening, that direction is always open, as many of you guys would know. So at this time, I'd like to acknowledge Lynn Power. We didn't coordinate our colored outfits, but I think we're actually wearing very similar jackets. So great minds think like Lynn, so that's wonderful. I really wish I could be there in person. I know the Signal Hill campus is quite beautiful. As many of you guys know, Lynn is our executive director of the college, and she will be assisting with various pieces of this evening's agenda and the business section of our meeting. Also socially distanced in the meeting room, and though I can't see who's there, if there were others, by all means, let me know. Matthew Rowe, our college legal counsel, Lana Littlejohn, the Director of Corporate Services, James Shepard, Manager of Public Affairs, and Christine Fitzgerald, Executive Assistant. Is there anybody else present in the room, Lynn, that I haven't noted?
Yes. I think then, because I wasn't sure about the colored light that I had on. Julie Wells has joined us, as well as Bradley Walsh as the Manager of Registration Services, and Brenda Carroll, the Director of PCR. We also are pleased to have Rodney Pike, one of our newly elected councillors, join us, and Louise and Glenn are in the room, two of our public reps. So that speaks to the room composition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. I ask you now to refer to the annual meeting agenda. As stated in Bylaw Article 6, Section 1, the Council has the authority to approve the annual meeting agenda, and a motion to approve the meeting agenda was carried at Council's meeting just last week on June 2nd. The minutes of the college's annual meeting held on June 15th, 2021 are included in the annual meeting business documents, also available on the CRNNL website. As stated in the Bylaw Article 6, Section 1, the Council has the authority to approve the minutes of the annual meeting, and this again was done at a previous Council meeting in October of 2021. The next item on our agenda is the report of the Committee of Nominations. Just trying to get my papers here now. Christine did a great job. Thanks for organizing me. I now would like to call on Elaine Warren, Chair of the Committee on Nominations, who will present the report of the Nominations Committee and the results of the most recent election. Elaine?
Thank you very much, Tracy. Is my sound level good? Okay, great. And I'm not sure if I can turn on my video or not.
We can hear you loud and clear, Elaine. Oh, there you are. Wonderful.
Okay.
We can see you.
Thanks very much, Tracy. And it's my pleasure to be here this evening just to provide a brief report on the Committee of Nominations for the 2021-22 year. So I'd like to introduce the committee members. There are 6: Sophie Pag, Sarah Minerving, Elizabeth Suley, Renee Luley-Bourne, Christine Fitzgerald, which is our staff support, and myself, Elaine Warren, as chair. So as with previous years, especially in light of COVID, all our committee business was done basically electronically again this year. The call for nomination processes for new councillors was sent out to the membership on October 19th till November 10th. There were 2 positions that were advertised this year: the position of Advanced Practice Counselor and Practice Counselor. Those eligible to vote included any registered nurse residing in the province and holding a practicing license in good standing. The slate of candidates were announced to members on December 1st, 2021. The voting process, as previous years, was paired with license renewal and conducted electronically by Jonathan Miller, IT, and Triware Technologies through the MyCRNNL website from January 18th to March 31st, 2022. There were no technical difficulties with the electronic module during this time period. The results were 1,500 members voted this year. While that was approximately 110 or so less than the previous year, it is still substantially higher than before we went to electronic voting, so by double. So there continues to be, I guess, a stable number of nurses who are voting, and I think that is putting the cues with pairing it with the registration. The results, 3 candidates were nominated for the Advanced Practice Counselor, and as Lynn referenced, Rodney Pipe was the successful candidate there for that position. Congratulations. There were 2 candidates nominated for the Practice Counselor position, and Sarita Wheaton was the successful candidate there. All candidates, both successful and not successful, were nominated in person or by phone in early April by the chair of the nominations committee. And again, on behalf of the nominations committee, I would really like to thank all nurses who put their names forward for positions for council, whether successful or not. I also would like to congratulate Sarita and Rodney and wish them luck in their new roles. And I also would like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow committee members, and in particular Christine Fitzgerald, because everybody knows who is the backbone for this committee. Thanks very much, Tracy. That's it.
Thank you, Elaine. And again, thank you to each of the members of the nominations committee. I'm pleased to welcome Lana Littlejohn, the College Director of Corporate Services, who is with us this evening for the presentation of the financial statements. I also acknowledge online the presence of Lori Pittman, CPA Chartered Accountant with KPMG, who are our auditing firm. The college's summary financial statements for the year ending March 31st, 2022 are included in the annual report. Approval of the full statements by College Council occurred at our most recent meeting, June 2nd, 2022. And are now posted to the college's website. I call upon Lana Littlejohn to present the audited financial statements. Lana?
Thanks, Tracy. Just a slideshow. There we go. Okay. So as Tracy said, the financial statements were posted to the website. So I'm going to be giving you a brief overview of the results for the year. So what are financial statements? Well, financial statements are part of the auditor's report, and they're really a report card telling us how the organization performed over the year. You know, the A's, the B's, the C's. The important part of the audited financial statements is the auditor's report itself, which tells you whether the numbers are accurate and whether you should have any concerns about the future operation of the business. As well, the financials themselves are included in the financial report. And the financials themselves include the statement of financial position, which is the balance sheet, the statement of earnings, and that's did revenue cover your expenses, the statement of cash flows, which is the report on the sources and uses of cash, and then the notes to the financial statements, details about the numbers, sometimes a little bit extra explanation when it's needed. Okay. There we go, okay. So the auditor's report. The auditors of the firm KPMG gave their opinion in their independent auditor's report that the statements as prepared by the college are free of material misstatement and in keeping with the required accounting standards. So now we'll get to the statements themselves. The first statement, page 1 of your package, as posted on the website, is the statement of financial position. So this statement shows what we own in assets, such as cash, investments, and capital tangible assets like the building and computers, etc. Every year I highlight why cash and cash equivalents are as high as $3 million. And that's because with a January to March renewal period, all of our cash comes in that period of time to cover the 12 months of the year. So prior to the renewal period opening, the cash position, of course, is much lower. Cash is down slightly, as reported here, but this is because membership fees collected from January to March for the April 1st, 2022 licensure year are lower now with the CNA portion out. And this means the liability, called deferred revenue, is down correspondingly. Deferred revenue is the money that we take in one year that actually belongs to the next year. So the renewal period takes in cash for the 2022-23 licensure year. So a license is owed to members for the 22-23, but the cash came in 21-22. As well, our investments are up because of the reinvestment of our dividends made. And now we look at what we owe. And this includes what we owe our vendors, the government, and our employees at March 31st. The biggest amount owed is the licenses for April 1st. And that again is the money that I referred to that we collected prior to March 31st, but it is recorded as deferred revenue for April 1st, 2022. Net assets are the internally restricted funds, such as the Global Member Service Plan and the Building Contingency Plan, plus an unrestricted amount. Okay, so the real meat of the statements that I like to get into is the Statement of Operations. And this reports our revenue and expenses. Overall, revenue is up from last year due to 108 more licenses being issued, while fees such as late fee, lapsed fee, and unauthorized practice fee are down. Expenses overall are down as well, but this is due to several areas of increase offset by different areas of decrease. As you can see on the slide, salaries, for example, are up, and this is due to the last two Treasury Board increases. Plus, the prior year had a federal COVID subsidy that we were able to avail of. Practice and policy is up from prior year with the development and build of the new CCP plan through MyCRNL. Administration saw an increase primarily due to the increasing oil costs and the completion of a cybersecurity audit done by a professional firm. Governance, or the expenses of council, have the added expense of strategic planning consultant used to help guide CRNL's new strat planning exercise. Now, these increases were offset by lower costs associated with communications, registration, and PCR. The biggest reduction in expenses is the affiliation fees, and that is for the CNA, Canadian Nurses Association portion of our licensure. That was not collected by the college nor remitted to CNA after January 1, 2022. And this was due to a change at CNA from a jurisdictional membership model now to an individualized one. We did recognize a gain in gains change in our market value of our sold investments in the amount of $61,000. So that's realized gain. But we did have to record a $97,000 unrealized loss. The goal is to sell an investment when the market is higher than the cost. The unrealized loss is required to be reported, but it is not a realized gain or loss until the investment is sold. It is reported as the difference between what we originally paid and its market value at March 31st. So every effort, of course, would be made to hold on to an investment till the market value is greater than cost. The effects of COVID and, of course, the war in Ukraine on the market are the reasons for this decline. The overall excess of revenue over expenditure of $346,000 allowed us to increase our targeted reserves, primarily the building fund and our PCR fund, as was the plan back in April 2011 when the last membership fee increase went through as supported by members. The next statement is the statement of changes in net assets, and this shows the change between the current year and prior year's net asset balances. So you'll see here too the effect of the $1 collected from all members for the Ways and Means Fund, as well as $1 for the Global Member Services. This statement is meant to give you an indication of how much the college either added to or depleted its net assets, and enables you to see the available resources for future service delivery. And you'll see this, the college has been able to add to the conduct and building fund, for example, bringing the latter to 1.5 million. The next statement is the statement of cash flows. And this one on page 4 is one of the harder financial reports for non-accountants to understand. Essentially, it's the sources and uses of cash, the increases and decrease in cash, how much was generated and how much was used. For example, the excess of revenue over expenses of 346,000 is a source of cash, and the decrease in accounts payable means we used cash to pay our bills down. This statement helps you to understand the organization's cash viability in order to meet debt and continue as a going concern. Our statement shows that we did not experience any cash shortfalls during the year as a result of paying our bills, and any excess cash we put in investments. Page 5 of the audit report begins with the notes to the financial statements. You may have already referred to some of the notes for further clarification. I won't go through them all, but as the users of these statements, it's important that you understand that the notes are there to give you a more comprehensive assessment of the college's financial position. The COVID note, for example, was a new note in 2020. It's no longer a new note and now has become a regular note, part note 11 in financial risk. So in summary, I just want to clear or make it obvious that we've had a clean audit opinion on our statements, and we're able to complete our mandate as a regulatory body and continue to build our reserves for council-directed funds. And questions on this presentation will be taken when we open the lines later in the evening. Thank you.
Thank you to Lana, and we'll hear from Lana and Lori possibly in the open discussion, as well as to the members of the Finance and Audit Committee. Moving on to the next agenda item, we have the annual report. Our Executive Director will provide the operational report, which is also further detailed on the on the CRNNL website, The PowerPoint will be on the screen and further available on the CRNNL website. Questions and comments will be addressed during the open discussion forum at near the end of the agenda for this evening, I should say. I now call upon Lynn Power, the CRNNL's Executive Director, to present the annual report.
Thank you, Tracy. Just waiting for it to come up on screen. And I have pink on, just because maybe the lighting. So if you got gray, we got pink, we're close. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today, this evening, and look forward to some discussion as we go through. So what I'm going to do is just touch on some of the commentary in the annual report. So I'd encourage you, those who are on the website, to open the annual report, flip the pages. I will just pull out 1 or 2 figures, but it's data on our bread and butter work, our registration, our PCR work, our practice, our portfolio, and the supports we provide, some of our partnerships, and it's all divided up in that way. So I encourage you to have a good look, follow along, and I'll just, like I said, draw your attention to 2 figures just to give you a snippet of the year. So just to set the stage, these are the strategic outcomes. You'll see them again a little bit from in Tracy's conversation, but all our work is organized in the annual report under these 3 areas. And as indicated, we're undergoing strategic planning. So you might see some change in this, and we look forward to your input if we do need changes in it. So the first one is public confidence and self-regulation. So in this one is where we tend to talk about our registration and our PCR work. So this is where you will see our numbers. And data is a very important part of the work that we do. Being responsible to license every single registered nurse and nurse practitioner in the province means we have fulsome and accurate data. So our numbers are used for a lot of planning of different things. So just to give you a snapshot, we are going up, as was indicated in the financial statements, that there are more nurses. It's not excessive, but it's 1.6% increase in practicing nurses. And the number of non-practicing, this is people who choose to keep that type of licensure as a recognition of membership, increased a little bit as well. So we always run around just under 500 for the non-practicing, and we've been running in the practicing side around that 6,400. This is at year end because we will have nurses come and go throughout the year. You'll see the chart that just shows some of the changes over the last couple of years. break that down a little bit further, this is our nurse practitioner lay of the land. You can see that's on an ever-increasing climb, still small, 238, but that's a 3.7% increase. So we are increasing, as you can see there, year over year. And I was just at the graduation at Memorial's Faculty of Nursing, and I was delighted to meet 14 new people there and welcome them into that new role. You'll also see that our internationally educated nurses, we added this element to the slide just because there's been a lot of conversation about it. It is data we collect. You can see year over year, but it's a very small number. And it changes a little tiny bit, but not in any excessive amount. So our numbers at year end was 103. That equals 1.6% of our practicing membership. So it's a very small number, but it is taking a little bump over last year. It will be interesting to see what next year brings. I put this slide in on purpose because, again, I'm trying to connect what might be relevant to those listening and what you may hear out there in the system and what you might be using from our data sources for your own planning. This basically tells you that our over 60, the smallest little bucket on the right-hand side, has really not changed over the years. So we're roughly the same if you look at every column. It's those that are 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and 60 plus. So that's the way they're spread out over there. And you can see that really we haven't changed. Our demographic spread in age has not changed that much. So 7.1% of our membership were over the ages of 60. And when we break that down, that tends to be a combination of people probably in some leadership roles. I had mine this year, as well as people like in academia who are, or people who are building careers in different ladders or research or whatnot. Not all. By no means, but when you break it down in detail, that's certainly spread out over different domains of nursing practice. We also are responsible for licensures, both the NCLEX RN, so the entry from the Bachelor of Science in Nursing program, as well as from the Nurse Practitioner program, which is the CNP exam. And you can see there's lots to be proud of. We have consistently high pass rates. Don't pay any mind about any dips in the NP because it's, again, very small number, so it doesn't take much to skew a little bit of data. We also have writers in our province that write from, take education in different jurisdictions, et cetera. So just to show you, it's exceptionally high, and we have a lot to be proud of. And good luck to all of the people that are writing now or the NP crowd waiting for results. Didn't come in yet, did it, Brad? No, okay. So good luck to everyone, and we welcome everybody as they come forward. So that's a little snapshot of our numbers. So the second part I'd like to sort of highlight is our professional conduct review. And if you have questions on the numbers, Brad Walsh is here as the manager of registration, Julie Wells as our research and policy officer runs a lot of our data analysis. But for this section of professional conduct review, Brenda Carroll is with us. So Brenda can also answer any questions later. I'm just going to do a snapshot again in the annual report. So you can see this diagram just sort of shows some of the flow of about how we'll talk about some of the allegations that come into us, kind of how they're filtered, how they're reviewed by Brenda, some of the mechanisms that they can be resolved or moved towards, and then if those that have to go to a hearing at the very end of the spectrum. So just talking about our number of allegations, and again, the boxes, for those who can't see this super well, the boxes are the registrants. So that's how many individual nurses. The allegations are the line. So in this year past, we had 60 allegations against 45 registered nurses. So even though the number of allegations are up, the number of registered nurses is pretty consistent to last year. It is an important role that we have at the college. It's one of the roles as given to us in the RN Act, and Council play a pivotal role in this through their ongoing work. It's a part of the public protection, and it's an important data that we look at, but I'm glad to see that it's staying down to some extent because this is an area that indicates there are some concerns. So where those concerns were, what reaches the threshold of conduct deserving of a sanction, which means it moves through those processes, it can fall into a couple of categories. So this circle diagram kind of shows the broad categories where they are. These are identified in our bylaws. You'll see them in the back of the bylaw, so you can look at some of the examples and some of the things that fall underneath those. But like a breach of the act or regulations or code was the largest area. We do get some incapacity or unfitness to practice. You'll see professional incompetence there and professional misconduct. So that, like I said, they're broad sort of categories, but you can see all the description of where they are. But in the annual report, there is a box that outlines some examples underneath each of those areas. So I encourage you to have a look at it. It's a learning for us all. We should be talking about this because we need to learn, we need to progress, we need to support each other. And so this is important information. So this one is the outcomes, and I'm not going to go through numbers here, but it's just basically to show you that a vast majority go through an alternate dispute resolution process. So this keeps Brenda and her team very busy, because that's working with the individual, and if they have counsel or they're working with the complainant to walk through that process to come up with a mechanism that best supports public protection, but also supports the nurse if there's for the remedial component of it. So there's a fair bit of work. Agreements then are complex, and I add in Matthew Rowe, our legal counsel, who will play a significant piece in this, and I might as well throw in Michelle Nofal, our very critical assistant to that team. But that's a lot of work. So you can see there's stuff ongoing. So numbers may change because there's allegations maybe from one year to the next year carry into each other. So, but a fair percentage go through that mechanism. The Complaints Authorization Committee is the core of counsel. I mentioned that was play a pivotal role in kind of like almost like screening, determining which direction some of the allegations need to be looked at. And you can see they were extremely busy. And so we thank every single council member for their time, their dedication, their energy, and their commitment to this. This is taken very seriously and done with the public in mind, but very comprehensively, I will say. So you can see they've done a variety of options, and these options are also described in the RN Act, what their authorities are and what they can actually do. So you can read more about this, and of course you can also look at the complaint section on our website to read maybe more specifics. The tribunals, the last part, so that's your hearing, that kind of discipline panel type stuff. And again, thank you to all those who volunteer to be on our discipline panel. And if there's any public that are on our discipline panel, join us, thank you. We have a public rep on every single discipline panel as a group of 3. And we also have a public rep, one of our council members, on every single CAC, because this is about public protection, so it's important that that's presented that way. So again, you'll just see some outcomes. So thank you to both departments and both teams of people for some excellent work, and the council supporting all that. So the second strategic outcome that I'm touching on is accountable professionals. So in this one, you'll see a lot about our work of our policy and practice team, our policy and practice consultants, who will do some documents, consultation, education, outreach. So this is what falls underneath this sort of category. All about how do we build and support our nurses, how do we give them the guidance that they need, standards, codes, things like that, in order to know what's expected of them. As you can see on this, it's also a lot of making connections, talking to people, reaching out, responding. So this is just some of the data that's in the report, but it's a busy portfolio, and we have Peggy Rahman and Michelle Carpenter up there, supported by Jennifer. So it's, it's a busy department as well. And since I was naming names, I cannot miss our investigators. When I just said PCR, I might as well finish the circle, Rolanda and Robin. so it's a big team in that PCR side, and Brenda, I'm looking at Brad now, Jessica and Carolyn support Brad's team. So there's a full teamwork. Lana's on her own. So this area here, we'll say over almost 600 calls. Presented to over 231 different nurses, nursing students, a lot of presentations to nursing students to reach out, some workshops. We didn't have as much, that's post-COVID. We usually can have a larger number here. We're actually out where we're going through much more detailed conversations. But I want to highlight that our Tuesday afternoon teleconference sessions, we had 19 in the last year, and we had over 1,500 people join. And I'm sure all our CCP education sessions is going to blow that number out of the water, because the attendance has been fabulous on the areas. But you'll also see there's a good variety of why people call, why people connect. something about the standards, maybe there's issues, maybe it's just clarification about something, maybe it's about scope of practice, self-employment, certainly a busy area. So it's just an overview of that. So some of the other pieces in it about making connections in this area is some of the joint work we do. We do collaborative education sessions and collaborative events. And this one I'm going to highlight here is one we've been doing now. Oh my goodness, are we into 18, 19 years? I haven't got anybody here to look at me to tell me that we've been doing a joint educational session with the social workers and with the LPN College in the last, say, 10 years. And it's a big event. It's broadcast right around the province, long before we needed to do virtual and all the COVID rules. And we usually get that range of people, 600, 700, 800 people. And it's about something that we need to talk about. And you can see this one was on fostering cultural competency. So very timely. Thank you to that whole team and our partners. I can't leave this session even though the CCP went live in this year. Last year there was a lot of busy work. So this is up to March 31st annual report. So there was a lot of resources that were developed, including the framework. And there were some complementary resources. There's a guide, there's frequently asked questions. There was a campaign that was done on our communication launch, and I'll give James Shepherd a kudos for that and working with Waterworks, because that video was an excellent production. So all that hard work went on this year to launch it, and we'll tell you more about it next year. So the third strategic outcome is called the evolution of the profession, and this is about trying to look forward. What is it we need to work on as an organization within our mandate? So our mandate is regulation, our mandate is setting standards, setting the codes of ethics, it's the registration, it's the licensure. We're not an advocacy group, we are a regulatory college, but we also need to be prepared. So the language in this is what is it we need to know about and get ready to have nurses being prepared for into the future. So this stuff is the thinking stuff, and it also comes from working in partnerships, working in teams, finding out where the needs may be. So this one we've been telling you about a little bit off and on. We're waiting to have the regulations signed. Hint, hint, if there's anybody from government on. But we're getting close. We think we're going to have it this year, but that kind of a role, the role that RNs would have in introducing prescribing in a very defined way is, well, there's a document available to describe it. It is different from an NP role completely, but this is an important work to improve access, to improve the role that nurses will take place, and it really will work well if and when a lot of the elements of the health accord roll out, especially around community care teams. So I will just touch on a few other collaborations and partnerships, but again, I refer you to the report where we touch on some of these. And if you have any questions, maybe call me at another time. We can get into it. If you got ideas for evolution of the profession, call us again as well. But we've been certainly involved, as I said, in the IEN work. There's some big stuff we'll report upon. And the second one, this Nursing Community Assessment Service, brand new project we're starting up, working in partnership with the Center for Nursing Studies and their team to look at an advanced way to evaluate IENs and to bridge them in gaps of education into being prepared to practice in our province. There's also been some work done around the bridging program for current IENs that are in the process, and Central Health, we kudos to them for partnering with us, again with the centre moving it out there. Touch on two there. We're actually working on a large nationally, CCRNR is Canadian college, Canadian collaboration of RN regulators. You almost have me challenged then. So basically, it's the executive leads and the organizations of all regulators for registered nursing nurse practitioners. So we're looking at what do we need to do to enhance and streamline and bring NP regulation and NP projects into the future and into the forefront. A lot of work there. There's a project newsletter on that. There's even a section on CCRNR's website specifically about this. Encourage you to follow this, engage in this, and we're going to have some entry-level competencies surveys work on the go very soon. Even though that's in this year, please sign up and participate and give us your feedback. The last one there is something, again, these take years and years sometimes to work out, but they're big things. We're working on a national unique identifier, so one number to identify who you are as a registered nurse. Because right now my number is 12484, but I bet you there's probably 20 12484s across. So trying to identify who you are when you're moving around in mobility or whatever makes it a huge challenge. So we're on the cusp of getting a unique identifier, and I will give kudos to Ontario and BC because they're footing the bill and the heavy work and doing all the homework in terms of all the requirements for this. But the goal for that is then to probably come into a multi-jurisdictional licensure. So it's big goals. We'll need legislative changes to do it. But we're working on this, and this is bringing us into the future. This is the evolution of the profession. As we're in a federated model, so we've got a lot of the heavy legislative guidance and structures that go with that, but really, where are we now? We're in a mobile world. So all this stuff will take us into the future. And these require partnerships with the provincial government, with federal agencies, with the principal nurse advisory groups, the chief nurses for all across the country, and every single other jurisdiction. So it's exciting work. I will sort of put it all together in a package at the end of this and to say that our communications, we've been trying to really focus on much more outreach. The website has totally been revamped and revised, and if you haven't had a good look at it, please do. Give us feedback. Everything we're hearing is excellent, and James and Julie help with that significantly, as well as Waterworks, our vendor that we work with. We've also launched some new social media platforms, enhanced some of the others. We've had a Twitter account for a little while, but please join us, please follow us. This is the way we get information out now. We will be the College Connection magazine, the All Access, for anybody online that's been around like me, would know that magazine is still a good means of getting information out to you, but that will be going online, like every other journal in that around. But it is there. We'll send you a note when it comes out. But we're using many more other platforms to reach you quickly, short, jotty messages, the notes from the practice team, the regulation matters, which comes out after council meetings. So sign up, follow us. We'll give it to you quick, short. I promise, you won't have to read 20 pages, maybe. And I will also say we've had the opportunity to have some media appearances to be able to discuss the mandate of our college in a role. And you'll see a couple of them named there. And we've been pleased to be able to do that. And you'll see we're on NTV's, I can't even remember the title of it now, but it was Jesse Sterling's Meeting with Remarkable People. And that allowed us to really talk about what is our role, what's there, and to do a call out that we need more public reps and more public engaged with us. So there's been a busy year, I will say. There's not much that you won't see in this report or find on our website, but if you do see something you want to dig deeper in, please reach out, and we'll take some questions in the open forum, and I'll pass it back to the team. And I've thanked the staff all the way through, but I want to say thank you again to every one of it. What a fabulous team we have, 16 of us in the office, and it is a great team. We've had some turnover, some changes, but you would never meet a better dedicated, smart, intelligent, critical thinking, the words I use for nursing, smart critical thinkers. And we got a fabulous team, and kudos to them all. And this year's success goes towards that and the fantastic leadership of our council and governing board. So thank you. Back to you, Tracy.
Thank you. And I think, Lynn, when you're at the mic, your voice is trailing a tiny bit when you're not close enough to it. I know it went a little soft for me at the end there. And I think some may be having a little bit of a hearing lower. So I'm going to try and raise my voice a little bit. I always try to start with the story of the kids, but will someone populate my presentation, or will I share mine? Is it up there on the screen now? Just checking.
Yep, I'll share it with you, and you can just tell me when. Next slide.
It's up.
Okay. Yeah. That's great. And I just want to acknowledge that we did have a public rep join, Aubrey Daw, as well as Melissa Colburn. So just for the minutes as well, just wanted to acknowledge that. Okay, you can go ahead and I'll get started. So as indicated, the next 10 minutes or so, I'll talk pretty fast. I'll give a very high level review from a governance level as the chair, and on behalf of our amazing council, as well as the team from CRNL that supports the work, of the things that have happened over the past year. And next slide, please. The one that starts with strategic outcomes. So I won't repeat the things that Lynn has highlighted, but just to kind of center our thoughts and the work that we're doing, they are right now wrapped in these three strategic outcomes: public confidence in self-regulation, which is our privilege and a privilege that we hold near and dear, accountable professionals, and the evolution of the profession. We'll move to the next slide. So the College Council for the last year was comprised of myself, Tracy McDonald as the chair and central rep, Glenn George as the vice chair and one of our public representatives, Stephen Clark, public representative, Louise Pinsent Parsons, public representative, Aubrey Daw, public rep, Pat Rogers, Eastern Region, Donna Luther, Western Region, Megan Hudson, Lab Grenfell Region, Kelly Barron, Advanced Practice, Krista Sims, Practice, Melissa Colburn, Nursing Education and Research, Neil Colburn, Administration, Kimberly Legg, Counselor at Large, and Tanya Ryan. And the work that I'm about to present is a collective representation of the contributions of this team supported by CRNNL. We'll move on to the next slide. So as indicated, we had a new public rep join last year, and that's Mr. Aubrey Daw, as well as the following individuals were elected last year: Megan Hudson as Lab Grenfell Counselor, Melissa Colburn, Nursing Education Research, and Neil Colburn, Administrative Counselor. I would also like to take this opportunity to publicly welcome each of these individuals to Council, and also thank the individuals who volunteer their time to sit on Council. Lynn talked about the Complaints Authorization Committee, and there's a tremendous commitment, time-wise, and investment from staff as well as Council to do that important work. I would also like to acknowledge our councillors who will be outgoing, and that is Krista Sims and Kelly Barron, as well as welcome new incoming councillors Saritha Wheaton and Rodney Pike, who I understand is at Signal Hill campus. Acting in the best interest of the public is so vitally important to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I feel personally quite proud, and I think I'm hoping at the end of this AGM that those that are listening take a sense of pride as well. I've had the fortune to travel Canada in the past couple of months, and I do find opportunities to ask questions to registered nurses throughout my journeys. And it's very validating to hear very similar, not only struggles, but very similar reasons to be quite proud of the work that we do and that privilege of self-regulation. Next slide, please. Just want to highlight the June meeting highlights. Highlights from last year's June 2021 meeting of the college included the approval of the financial statements for the year of April 1st to 2020 up until March of that year of 2021. We also had the approval of the practice guideline, documentation principles, and if anyone goes on the website, the new website is absolutely fantastic. I personally have found myself going to it more often. It's very easy to navigate, and there's amazing new documentation, documents that are populated routinely, easy to find things as you need them. They approved the recruitment of a firm to complete a cyber threat risk audit. And I just want to pause there for a second. This was very timely and was highlighted by the Finance and Audit Committee, which I sit on. In fact, our RFP that had gone out closed just a week and a half, 2 weeks prior to the cyber attack that happened in our province. And I think that just speaks to the foresight and always thinking ahead and mitigating that risk. So that's just an important piece that I wanted to highlight. We've also accepted the Strategic Outcome Annual Progress Evaluation Report as evidence of a satisfactory progress for that period of 2020 to 2021, and this would be last June's meeting. And during this period, the College Council received a presentation from the Health Accord, which we all know now continues to move ahead, and approved a joint submission to the Health Accord Newfoundland from the College of Registered Nurses, and that came from Executive Director Lynn Power, and jointly with the College of Licensed Practical Nurses and their Chief Executive Officer, Wanda Wadman. Council was also presented with the results of the public survey. So next slide, moving on to October meeting highlights. October meeting highlights included, and each of you may know the details of this. Certainly the decision by the Canadian Nurses Association to move to individual memberships, and that still continues to evolve. However, the College Council approved changes to our bylaws, and as a result, the registration and annual licensure renewal fee for RNs and NPs from the college for April 2022 will be readjusted and will be $73.19 less. A motion was also made at the College Council to explore future relationships with the other health regulators and really define ways that we can collaborate in a more purposeful manner, look and consider joint ventures, and really overall enhance operational efficiency. Council requested our Executive Director, Lynn Power, begin preliminary work on this matter, and we continue to keep this as a focus. Council also accepted the Internationally Educated Nurse Bridging and Re-Entry Program's annual report, which showcased success in preparing students to meet the entry-level competencies and certainly highlighted several achievements and initiatives. An annual report from nursing education programs ensures the programs continue to meet the regulatory mandate, and the program did receive a 5-year approval status in October of 2019. Work has also begun on creating the regulations necessary, and Lynn highlighted this a little bit in her session, to add prescribing to the scope of the RNs in Newfoundland and Labrador. And certainly as healthcare evolves, I referenced a health accord and the work that's happening in our province as well as across the country and the changing needs of our population. We know this will be work that will be really vital to the role of the registered nurse in the coming years. During this college year's council, we also had a joint education session with the College of Licensed Practical Nurses on governance and best practices, and approved the hiring of a consultant for strategic planning, which has started, and that's presently ongoing. We're very excited about that work. Next slide, please. So February's meeting highlights. As we entered into 2022, I think many of us felt like we were on the downswing, and I think we're all holding our breaths now cautiously. However, as you can see throughout this presentation, the work has continued. During the February meeting, the college approved the release of the self-employment document, which replaced an outdated document or an older document from 2016, and that is available on our website. This document provides registered nurses and nurse practitioners with the principles that require reflection when engaging in self-employment, and certainly poses questions to consider when examining, considering exploring self-employment practice opportunities. The college operating budget for 2022-2023 was also presented to the College Council and approved as presented. And to support climate positive initiatives and in the following following the lead of other regulators in various jurisdictions, the college has decided to have a future editions of College Connection magazine to be published digitally. And Lynn mentioned this as well. A notice will be circulated to RNs and NPs when each issue is published and when it is available online. And we've been hearing from RNs and NPs certainly over the year and wondering about if we were going to switch to that platform, and that certainly has been the trend. The college has also begun an initiative to undergo a strategic planning exercise, and we're very new into that, but we've had a lot of work already completed, which will really be a place in which for us to continue to focus on the work ahead, especially evolution, and look at reshaping the organization in the years ahead. Following the meeting of College Council, a strategic planning ad hoc committee was formed, and that has been operational and has been actively working. And the final slide, to conclude this presentation, certainly on a personal note, I just want to share to the group that I'm in my last term, so I have 2 more years as a representative on council, and this by far was one of the best decisions I have made when I relocated back to Newfoundland and Labrador with my family. If anyone online or you know of other people who are interested, There's always positions that come up, and this is just such important work. It's important for the work that we know is going to be ahead in terms of what's going to happen to healthcare. And I guess my urge for everybody here who's listening and for people that you have conversations with in the coming weeks and months is to certainly reach out and find ways to participate in this important work. I said last year when I chaired this meeting that my kids, I'm a mom of 4 kids, so I don't think I've done a presentation where I haven't shared something about my kids. And one of my daughters made a comment about being on a video. So I guess, I don't know, I made a comment about circulating and my memory will be around. And when we first came online this evening, I noticed how big my face was on the screen, just the image. And I thought, well, wow, I'll have to tell my kids that not only do you hear my voice probably ever on the World Wide Web, you'll see a picture of me too that will be the size of a big screen. So just had to end on something personal as well. I am so very pleased, as I said. I'm very fortunate to be able to travel a little bit the country because of work. And certainly it makes me even more proud of where I come from and the work that I'm doing specifically related to regulation. We are leading the way in a regulatory reform, and that's been clear since day one of me starting and participating in the council work. We are establishing our identity and getting a firm grip on who we are as regulators and how we can leverage and link with other regulators in our province as well as across the country. This is something that we're bringing to the forefront, and it should be commended. The advancement and progress we see to date would not be possible, certainly if not for the dedication of our governing body and the hard work and talents of our operations team, and that would be the CRNL staff. Thank you all so very much, and I certainly look forward to what is in store for the years ahead. So we'll move on to the open discussion forum. I will remind each of you to put your questions or comments in the chat feature. John, no, it's Riley. It was John, now it's Riley. Riley and James will support this session by reading out the items in the order in which they are received. And certainly I will reiterate if we're not able to get to all of the questions, even though we have plenty of time, or if there are additional questions following this evening's event, by all means, reach out to any one of us, including Lynn as the Executive Director of the college. So I will open it up. I'm assuming Lynn will go up to the mic as well, and we will share our responses in terms of what comes in through the chat. This is your opportunity, and we're more than willing and happy to do so to respond.
Thank you, Tracy. I promise not to wiggle as much than if I was moving around, animated and excited. So my apologies if you lost connection of my voice. So we're just looking over to the AB crowd. Is there any questions or comments in the chat? Okay. Doesn't appear to be anything now. If anybody had any questions or comments on the audited financial statements, the Laurie Pittman from KPMG is also joined us, as well as with Lana. So they're available if there's anything on any of those comments as well. So we thank Elaine Warren for her dedication for the nominations committee. She will finish her role, and Krista Sims. So we also regenerate everybody. So if you think you're finished with the term on council, you do get back on again in some capacity because of your excellence. You shine. So we're really pleased to thank Elaine for her years of leading the nominations work, and welcome Krista Sims, an outgoing council member, to take that chair role on this coming year. So it will be Krista that will be patting people on the shoulder and tapping you, encouraging you to consider getting engaged with us in a governance way.
I was just going to jump in, Lynn. We are wearing the same jacket, but that's not what I was going to say. I want not the same, but the same color. It is pink. I think one of the questions that I would anticipate is on people's minds is, given there's a lot of work ahead in terms of what healthcare is going to look like. And we've heard Dr. Parfrey as well as Sister talk about reimagined healthcare. And it's almost, a bit challenging to get our heads wrapped around that. But it's important, I think, for as members of council and the role in terms of public protection and public safety is what role would CRNL play in that? And really, our role wouldn't be around employment and things that are happening on the ground, but certainly to be at the table, and we've been at the table to have those vital conversations. As Lynn has reported in terms of the annual report, and certainly when you go online, we have so much data, and I know Julie's in the audience, that we are able to help and support many different parts of healthcare, government as well in Newfoundland and Labrador, and certainly we would have a role to play in that. I just wanted to draw attention to that little piece right now while we had a bit of a moment and there weren't any questions coming in.
Still no questions that are coming in from anybody online. And we can also take that as a compliment that the information shared was, expansive enough to cover the topics that are relevant in the annual report. All our documents were posted to the website, as Tracy indicated in the start, 2 days ago now. Presentations went up today. So you can now peruse the material, have a look at it, and go through it, but they have been up there for a couple of days in advance to give people that time to have a look. So I guess if there's nothing, because we've encouraged comments and questions throughout the whole session, if there's nothing there, then I guess I'll pass it over you to conclude for the evening. Still good over there, guys? Yep, go ahead, Tracy.
I think so. Thank you. And certainly, as noted, sometimes following these types of events, or when you take an opportunity to go in and peruse the website and the documents that are there, you may have questions, and as always, warmly welcome them. We'll move on to just the last couple of items on our agenda, and we'll start with the introduction of the College of Registered Nurses of Newfoundland and Labrador's Council for 2022-2023. Myself, Tracy McDonald, as chair, Glenn George as vice chair and one of our public reps. And our three other public reps would be Stephen Clark, Louise Pinsent Parsons, and Aubrey Daw. And I just want to say that the contributions of our public rep to the work of council, which is quite in depth, as we've alluded to this evening, we wouldn't be able to do it without them. And a special thank you to each of you. Nursing counselors are as follows: Kimberly Legg, Tanya Ryan, Pat Rogers, Donna Luther, Megan Hudson, Rodney Pike, Saritha Wheaton, Neil Colburn, Melissa Colburn, and of course Lynn Power, our executive director, and the amazing team from CRNL that surrounds and contributes and supports every piece of work that we do. Also, a special thank you to our two council members who will be leaving council now, and for your contributions over your term for the last 3 years. And that would be Kelly Barron and Krista Sims. So some final thank yous. Before we adjourn our meeting this evening, I would certainly like to extend additional thanks to the college staff and Christine Fitzgerald, who has answered my many last-minute texts and emails, and to James Shepard as well, for the added work that yourself and Julie and all of the staff have put in to the documents, and Lana as well, for this evening's event. And to all the members in our public who took the time to look back over the last 12 months with us. As always, if anyone is interested in becoming involved, by all means reach out. More than happy to describe my experience. You certainly will open yourselves up to being a big part of what regulation looks like for registered nurses and nurse practitioners, and it will be time well spent. So I'll end on that little note. Lynn, any closing remarks for you before I finally adjourn?
Have my mic off? No, I don't think so. Again, thank everybody for joining, and we wish you a nice evening. It's not warm here in this part of the island, but at least the sun is shining.
That's right. So please take time to fill out the evaluation, which is on
No.
our website.
No, there's no evaluation.
Oh, okay, that was in what I had here. So skip that. But if there is any feedback about this evening, by all means, we will gladly accept that. I declare the 68th Annual General Meeting of the College of Registered Nurses of Newfoundland and Labrador adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.